Oh, earth, can you hear me? There is more than what you see. And though you've fallen, it's not over. There's so much more that you could be. This will pass. Keep a light in your eye. Let go of what you feel. For life takes us by surprise, but it goes on. We go on and on. Oh, hearts, don't give up, even when you fall to your knees. Hold on, hope will save you, and your sorrows will begin to cease. And this will pass. Keep a light in your eye. Let go of what you feel. For life, it takes us by surprise, but it goes on. We go on and on. It goes on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here on the East Coast of the United States of America. Thank you for joining us on Tonight in America. Program note, we'll be back Thursday night with our broadcast Tonight in Canada, and I hope to have some farmers on. We're going to hear from them with regard to what's going on with the buying up of farmland in Canada. In addition to that, we have invited, and if you could help us, those of you in Canada who are watching, help us by getting the word out to your conservative candidates running for office, like what we're going to be doing here in America with our conservative candidates. We want them to come on this broadcast. We want to help you get people elected who are going to represent you, who are going to do what is in the best interest of the Canadian people. I know that I've received hundreds of emails and messages from Canadian residents regarding your recent election. And I'm pleased to say that your conservative leader is going to really be a good challenge for Justin Trudeau. In fact, I think he's going to defeat Justin Trudeau. But we'll talk more about that Thursday night. But we have a heck of a lot going on, folks, in the United States. And as you just saw, that was our tribute to the men, the women, the children, those who died on 9/11, our first responders, and those who also died in their office buildings, on the street, washing windows, doing whatever they do as a result of the most horrific attack on the homeland of the United States since World War II. Now, believe it or not, the controversy regarding 9/11 has not ended. I was on the air today here in the United States, and I've got to tell you, there is a growing anger at the press here. I mean, you would think that the press in the United States would learn. But apparently, what I didn't know until today, until I was actually on the air, that there's a lot of anger steaming in America with regard to the United States media, not all of them, but a good number of them, giving more coverage to the funeral of Queen Elizabeth than coverage to those who died, who were killed in this horrific terrorist attack. And I understand it began yesterday on 9/11, where there was just coverage after coverage after coverage after coverage regarding the Queen, and it just diminished in many ways, shapes, and forms the sacrifices that a lot of people made on 9/11. Now, look, I respect anyone. I respect the royal family. I respect the Queen, the King, whoever they are. A person passes away, we send our condolences, and then we move on. But when it comes to the United States of America, what the mainstream media has to understand, and I'm talking to you, CNN, I'm talking to you, MSNBC, I'm talking to you, media outlets that have been more concerned about advancing what I believe to be a communist influence, a communist agenda. You need to understand that you're going nowhere. I mean, to do what you did with regard to media coverage is a disgrace. It's unacceptable. And come November 2022, perhaps many of you are going to be following the lead of CNN, where CNN is now, their ratings are so bad, they're losing millions of dollars. They're firing people. They're firing a lot of their top anchors, and they're trying to bring more people in to do what? To report the news. Isn't that something? The news media actually going to be reporting the news. And I wish the new executive officers at CNN my best. I hope that they get rid of these liberal individuals who have done more to fuel the fires of division in this country than anyone else. I've never seen anything like this. But that's what's happening here in America with regard to this entire scenario. The Queen, here's a headline: the Queen's coverage versus the coverage of those who died on 9/11. Unbelievable. But that's what happens, right? That's what happens when the bad guys take control. But the bad guys are not going to be in control much longer. Now, another controversial issue. And I was reluctant to bring this up, but you know what? I'm going to bring it up tonight because I'm kind of frustrated at this point with a certain group of people. But saying that, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it does involve the United States and Canada, but particularly the United States. We have put out an appeal, and we're continuing to put out this appeal to pastors and church leaders throughout the entire United States of America, and we're asking them to step up, to get in touch with us, and to step up. And to become part of a movement here in America to do what? To inform the American people as to what in the world is going on in Canada with the churches, with their freedom of religion, their freedom of worship, and in particularly with the pastors and church leaders who have been arrested. All we're asking them to do is to step up and to do what? Get the credible, accurate information right from the mouths of these pastors. We are arranging meetings, folks, with those pastors who were arrested in Canada, with pastors here. And we do have a good number of pastors who have responded, but in my view, not enough. I've got to tell you, and here's my, let's put it this way. Here's my message to you pastors. I know many of you are watching here in America. Know this, that your colleagues, the priests, the pastors, the rabbis, the men and women of the cloth in Canada are fighting a gallant fight. They're fighting an evil element in their country, and they are winning. But they need your moral support. They need your help. And even more so, if you think that the Communist Party and leaders like Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden and others are going to stop at the Canadian-American border, well, you better pack your bags and get out quick because they're coming for you. Who's coming for you? The Chinese Communist Party. Who's coming for you? The Communist Party of the United States. And if you don't think they're coming to you or against you or for you in the United States, better start reading the newspapers. I'm still waiting for American pastors to stand up and to voice their opinions regarding the Attorney General of the state of New York sending what has been referred to by the press, and I agree with them, as a threatening letter to a pastor, stating that if this pastor went on with their Reawakening America church service, that they're going to monitor that church service. And if they deem it, if the government deems the church service as being one that is biased, that is discriminatory, et cetera, they're going to take prosecutorial action against the minister. What do you think of that? What do you think of the government telling you what you will preach? What do you think of the United States government or some attorney general on their own unilaterally saying, you'll preach what I tell you to preach, and we'll have people in your pew monitoring you? Well, let me tell you something. For those pastors who have decided not to stand up and to fight for that lonely pastor, for those pastors and those church leaders in the United States of America, the country that gave you the right, that gave you the freedom to speak your mind, to preach the word of God, like Charles Spurgeon did in Britain, like John MacArthur did here in the United States, like Charles Stanley does Franklin Graham, Billy Graham, who honored this country and who stood on the foundation that was built by who? That was built by your colleagues, your pastors, your friends, the men and women of the cloth in the 1700s when this country was founded. Brave men and women. Some of them faced a death penalty by the King of England, but they stood up. They stood up behind the pulpit. They got on their knees and they prayed to God. They didn't get on their knees in fear of the government. They got on their knees in fear of God Almighty. And they decided to garner the strength that the Holy Spirit of God gave them to fight a tyrannical king back in the 1700s. And you know who's doing that today? Pastor and rabbi and church leader. You know who's doing that today? The American people, the Canadian people. They're doing it on their own. They're getting on their knees. You think you wonder why your churches are empty? You wonder why people are no longer giving to your local churches? Because they're fed up with the politics of the church. We here at Campaign America, we're not asking you to get entangled in politics. I've said that before. I think you should become part of the influencing of society. By doing what? By doing what? Now, here's what I believe the Attorney General of this state of New York is going to call an act of prejudice and an act of discrimination. You ready for this, folks? Here's what I believe that she would call this, if what I'm about to say, if it is what a pastor behind a pulpit would say. The Attorney General, in my view, of New York, and every Attorney General and every liberal and every communist in this country and every Democrat in this country who is opposed to freedom and liberty, they would say, we dare you, Lieutenant Rogers, we dare you to talk about sin. We dare you to talk about the sin of man. We dare you to do that, because when you talk about sin, folks, just take a look around and see every single thing that's going on in our free world. Canada, the United States, France, England, Germany, all of the countries where there is freedom and liberty being moved forward, these people in government are attacking our ability and our freedoms to talk about sin, because that's where it's all at. You're a corrupt politician, you're in sin. You go screwing around on your wife or your husband, you're in sin. Yeah, that's what you do, politicians. We know you do that. All right? Not all of you. And I thank God there are many of you who do good things. You steal money, tons and tons of money. Let me tell you something. You worship money. You've replaced the worship of God with money. That's why your country's in the fix it's in. Which tells me, folks, politicians, other than those who have the courage to stand up, politicians are not going to come out and do that and challenge their legislators, challenge their comrades, if you will, challenge their friends like William Wilberforce did years ago in Great Britain. He challenged them on all the things that I just said in order to get them to change their behavior from being corrupt, evil people to men and women who are going to stand up. But you see, it's not going to happen right away. It's going to happen when the pastors, when the church leaders come and say, enough is enough. We're going to talk about sin to those of you sitting in the pew. And guess who's sitting in the pew? The senators, the congressmen, the members of parliament in every country around the world, right? Those are people who are the lawmakers sitting in your pews wanting to hear what? Wanting to hear a wishy-washy sermon. A wishy-washy, nice sermon. What's the Bible say? In the end days, their ears will be itchy. They're going to hear what they want to hear, and the preachers are going to tell them what they want to hear, not what they should hear. This is why we are in trouble in the United States of America. One of the reasons why. Mr. Pastor, Mr. and Mrs. Church Leader, I want to ask you a question. There are sacred sacraments that churches have, so sacred ceremonial things going on in their church. I respect them all. I think they're wonderful. I've been to Catholic churches and Protestant churches, Russian Orthodox churches. There's so many beautiful, beautiful tributes to God in all of these churches. But how is it that any church pastor could have a politician come in that supports abortion, that supports other government leaders who are corrupt, that supports the proliferation of the Communist Party ideology? How do you have them come into church and receive Holy Communion? Or how do you have them come into church and ask you to bless them, and they come to an altar and there you go, you bless them with whatever you do? How do you do that? How do you think the king feels about that? I'm not talking about the king of England. I'm talking about the king called Jesus, the one we are accountable to. So therein lies, folks. Therein lies. And I'll wrap this part of my segment up with regard to this. It is an absolute, fundamental, important, necessary, critical duty of every church leader in the United States of America and many around the world and in Canada right now who are leading the fight for their freedom to stand up. Stand up. And you don't have to get a political talking point book in order to say what needs to be said with regard to the governments that are leading us down to the gate of hell. Because you have the document already. You have the rule book, the playbook, the roadmap. Here it is. Let them tell you that this book is wrong, that this book professes discrimination, bias. Let them tell you that. You see, they can't. Stick to this. My job and jobs of other political leaders to stick to the other things with regarding policy, etc. But you stick to your policy and you'll do more with the people for freedom and liberty than I could ever do, than any political leader could ever do. So hopefully some of you listening will get some courage and stand up and do what the people are doing. And by the way, the tallest man and women in the world, and I'll paraphrase it to saying the tallest preachers in the world are the ones on their knees praying. You tell us, those who come to your churches, to stand up for the cross, to stand up for Christ, to stand up for freedom and liberty from sin. Well, how about you practicing what you preach? Stand up for the people. Do what they did in the 1700s here in America. We'll be a lot better off. Now, I'm urging the Canadian people who are watching and others around the free world, by all means, find out who's running for office, who you want to get elected on the conservative part to overthrow Justin Trudeau, to get him to move to Costa Rica, where I understand he bought some property. And if that's true, listen, good luck, go. You know, you're not going to be missed, I can tell you that, Mr. Trudeau. And by the way, Joe Biden, you ought to go down there and why don't you become his neighbor? But anyway, if you have those candidates and you're working with some candidates in Canada, as we are talking to people in the United States, get them in touch with us. Have their campaigns get in touch with us. We're going to help you. I promised you a long time ago across the border that we will help you, because what's going on in Canada is where we must draw the line. The Canadian government under Trudeau is a national security threat, in my view, to the United States. And you're leading the charge right now. And we're not going to be behind you. We're not going to be in a distance where you can't see us. We're going to be right by your sides. We're going to do that. You make sure you get in touch with us. All right. So what's happening in America tonight? Well, folks, here's what's happening. Let's talk about the international front. And this is why we have dubbed this program, Why You Should Never Vote Democrat Again. Now, Democrats here in America watching, and the conservatives, obviously, and the independents who don't know which way to go, well, I'm going to help make your decision tonight. First of all, I warned many, many times for a year and a half, that Joe Biden's proxy war, it is a proxy war between Russia and Ukraine. This is the United States fighting a war through using Ukraine. That's my belief, my opinion. I see no value to the United States of America being involved in that war. I don't know what we're gaining. We've lost billions of dollars. There have been some Americans killed who have gone there to fight with the Ukrainians against Russia. A lot of Russian soldiers, young men, women have been killed. Everybody's getting killed. Nobody's gaining anything. A lot of civilians dying. If any politician could ask me, what has been gained? What has been gained by us being involved in that war? I still believe to this day that there could have been a negotiated settlement. Had somebody used their head, whether it be an American leader, a NATO leader, somebody had to step in after Joe Biden instigated this war. But now, here we are. Instead of 7 months, 7 weeks, 7 days, instead of 7 days or 7 weeks, 7, 8, 9 months later, here we are, still fighting a war. But here's what I warned. if the day comes that Ukraine decides to attack the Russian homeland, there's going to be a sharp escalation, I think, like anything we've never seen before. Tonight, Ukrainian forces have advanced north from Kharkiv to within 50 kilometers of the border with Russia, and they're also pressing to the south and east in the same region. Folks, reminds me of Vietnam all over again. It reminds me of what we call in the military mission creep. What are we going to do, Joe Biden? What are we going to do if with our weapons, Ukraine decides to launch a military operation on the Russian homeland? What are we going to do? Look, you've learned a long time ago in the U.S. military, and I'm sure many of us have even learned this elsewhere. You can't take an enemy and put them in a corner where there's no way out, because there's only one way out for that enemy is to fight their way out, and the casualties will be unspeakable. You got to give your enemies, you got to give your opposition an honorable way out of the fix that they're in. But it seems to me that Zelensky of Ukraine is actually dictating U.S. foreign policy. I mean, this guy, you know what, folks? I'm really kind of fed up with him. I'm fed up with all these politicians going to Ukraine, photo ops and this and that. I mean, who's in charge of the United States foreign policy here? It isn't Joe Biden. No, it ain't Obama. It isn't him. Who's in charge? Maybe the Chinese Communist Party. I don't know. There's nobody in charge. It's like a ship without a rudder and a captain. But we're being dragged into something we just may regret, and we're going to find out in the next few weeks. If the Crimea is attacked, who's coming? Who's coming there, Mr. Zelensky? You think U.S. troops are coming? Better not. And those of you who are in the United States tonight who are watching, and many of you are, I've said, Mom, Dad, begin to hug your kids. Because if you don't get up and stand up now and stop this, just like my family members and my son and me, just like we were involved and engaged in a war in Vietnam and Iraq and on and on and on, well, guess what? Your children will be fighting a war in some country far away. That's going to do what for us? That's going to solve what problem? The big shots, the police of the world, the United States went, and we're going to free you. We're freeing no one. We're losing our freedoms, let alone trying to free somebody else. And I'll always go back to what George Washington said. Biggest mistake the United States could make is get itself involved in foreign military conflicts. We have no business there. So that's what's going on. And then, because of Joe Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, we know that was Putin's signal to invade Ukraine. Then we got Iran and Israel. Joe Biden's policies are, well, Mr. Prime Minister of Israel, we're going to kind of relax a little with regard to this, with regard to that. We're going to try to make nicey nice with the Ayatollah, the guy that was responsible for thousands of U.S. troops, hundreds of U.S. troops, et cetera, being killed in the Iraqi war by Iran, deploying their IEDs, by arming militants to kill Americans. They're still doing that today. And what are we doing? Good old Joe is saying, go over there, send him another pallet of money. Maybe that'll solve his problem. But you know what I'm learning? They don't want American money. They want American blood. That's right. There won't be any more pallets of green going there. They want pallets of red coming back here, the red blood of American troops. So, Joe Biden, what are you going to do? So the Israeli government has made it very, very clear, and I support the Israeli government, and I pray to God they never have to resort to what they said they will resort to if they have to, and that would be a preemptive strike on Iran. You don't negotiate with terrorists, Mr. President. And speaking about not negotiating with terrorists, folks, another part of the 9/11 story that maybe many of you in Canada don't know, and maybe even some of you in America don't know, but the United States government is now opening up negotiations with who? The 9/11 masterminds, the ones we have in Guantanamo Bay. They're going to offer them plea bargains. Instead of the death penalty, instead of life in prison or whatever they were given, they want to make a plea bargain with them. How do you plea bargain with somebody who is a combatant, an enemy combatant, who was responsible for killing thousands of Americans, How do you do that? How do you think the kids who were 1 year old and their children are in their 20s right now feel? How do you think all the families of the victims feel? Imagine. I mean, folks, I'm against plea bargaining with killers anyway, but these are terrorists, for goodness sakes. But this is what's happened here in the United States. Read about it, folks. I'm sure it's all over the internet, if not the media. Yep. They want to negotiate with these masterminds, with these killer terrorists. And what do you think? I wonder, what are they going to offer us all these years later? What are they going to offer us? To me, they should get the death penalty. They should. They should have gotten the death penalty 20 years ago. But no, we got them in prison, paying their way. So you got Israel and Iran going at it. You got our country wanting to now negotiate with the terrorists we have in prison, let alone terrorists in Iran. But as all this is going on, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, his sanctions are really working. They are, folks. They're working against us. They're working against the American people. Why do you want to vote Democrat? I don't get it, folks. Why do you Democrats and you independents want to vote or would ever vote Democrat? Your prices are going up in the food store. California's a mess. Hey, their clean energy is working well. All their electric cars, they're telling the people who own electric cars, now listen, relax, take it easy. We don't want you to charge them that much. We have to save electricity. Our electric grids are overloaded. Imagine that. After telling people they can no longer buy gas engines, they have to buy electric cars. They go out and buy electric cars, there's no electricity. No electricity. That's a fact. And yet, what I find out today is that Governor Newsom and all these climate change people saying, you'll listen to what we say. You're going to go electric. We're going to go clean energy. You find out, folks, that their houses are being gas heated. That's right. Their homes. Gas is coming into their homes to heat them for the winter, etc. So now in the United States, we are feeling the sanctions of Joe Biden, not hurting Russia necessarily, but hurting us. But it's not just us, because now, guess who is feeling the brunt of this and is really going to feel the brunt of Joe Biden sanctions real soon as the winter months come on? Berlin. Germany is bracing for a winter of discontent amid the threat of a deepening energy crisis. Now listen to this. Triggered by Russia slashing gas supplies to Europe's biggest economy, stroking fears of recession, industry shutdowns, and large parts of the population freezing in their homes. That's what it says. They're worried that their population, large parts of their population, is going to freeze in their homes. Now I'm going to correct this news release. This is an actual news release. I'm going to correct it. And here's the part I'm going to correct. Germany is bracing for a winter of discontent amid the threat of a deepening energy crisis triggered by, I'm erasing Russia, by President Joe Biden. Because it was President Joe Biden who got engaged in a war that dragged NATO into this war. And when you're at war, what do you expect? Your opposition, your enemies to sit around and do nothing? So what does Putin do? He says, hey, why am I going to give my enemies gas and oil and energy? We'll just shut it off. That's what he did. Aren't these people dumb? I mean, really, these strategists, these economists, these military geniuses, didn't they? I mean, you don't figure out that the people that you are fighting to destroy are not going to do something against you? Doesn't anybody in Germany figure out, we got this gas line, this pipeline coming through, and, it's the Russians sending it to us. What if they cut the gas? What if they cut the oil? What if they cut the energy? But you see, the elitist, those who are in charge of that World Economic Forum, that, by the way, is taking a lot of hits lately, and we'll get into that at some other time. But all of these people, all of these big shots, yeah, you know what? They used to be big, but every day, look at this. They're getting little smaller and smaller because people around the world are fed up. The people in Italy, they're fed up. They're throwing out some of these liberals, WEF supporters. The people in France, same thing. In Germany, watch what happens there. Countries all over the world, people are rising up and they're saying enough's enough. And I tell those people all over the world, do it peacefully. Do it peacefully. Don't give the opposition, the enemies of freedom and liberty, the chance to create a narrative that'll hurt you. Do it peacefully. Just remember the truckers' convoy in Canada. Superb. Excellent. honorable, dignified. They were so good, the other side got so fed up, they actually dragged themselves, that's Trudeau and them, dragged themselves into a situation where they're now going to be thrown out of office. Here in America, tens of thousands of people protested all over the country. I'm not talking about the violent ones, I'm talking about the ones that weren't violent. And now they did do what at least we said, and I'm not saying they did it because we said it, they did it because many of us said it. The greatest march, the greatest protest, the greatest convoy is the one on election day. By the millions go. Now, for those of you in America who will say, well, you know, there's a lot of crazy stuff regarding these elections. You're going to go back to 2020. You're going to go back to election fraud and on and on and on. Let me share this with you. I haven't said much about it, but I will say something tonight. I have not said much about the 2020 election and all that's happened in the past for two specific reasons. One, let the investigators, I'm talking about the pros, there's still investigations going on. They're being done quietly, they're being done methodically, but let them do their job. All right? No politician, no political committee, nobody in the world of politics should be doing that investigation regarding election fraud, etc. Those investigations should be done by independent law enforcement agencies, and there are many around, and there's some doing it that you're not hearing about. Let them do their job so that you can do your job. And your job is to do what the opposition, the Democrat Party in this country, don't want you to do. They are planting seeds of discontent. They're the ones, and you're going to see this step up. We're going to be throwing a lot of stuff out regarding the 2020 election. They're the ones. And the Chinese Communist Party are going to antagonize the living daylights out of the American people and keep them divided and try to discourage Republicans and conservatives and independents who want to get rid of the Democrats, try to discourage you from voting by planting these doubts in your mind that everything's going to be on the up and up. That's right. Don't fall into the trap. No one can guarantee that the elections are going to go this way, that way. I can't. I'm not going to stand here and lead you to believe that. But I do know this. To give up, to surrender, to say I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote because everything's rigged. Well, you're right. If you don't go vote, it is rigged. It was rigged to ensure that you don't go vote. So you do everything you could to the best of your ability, rally your people. Look, I've been all over the country. Grassroots Americans are taking control of their local polls, of the local voting precincts. Believe me, a lot going on out there that you don't know about, a lot of good stuff. But to suggest not to vote and, let me tell you something. No one man, no one party, no one single individual in politics, no matter who they are going to solve the problems of the United States of America. The American people will solve their problems, and they will elect to office who they think is the best candidate to become president, senators, governors, on and on. That's how we do it. That is how we do it. Many of the Americans today weren't around, and I always mention him, he's right behind me, weren't around when Jimmy Carter was president and Ronald Reagan decided to run. Reagan, he was able to bring the American people together, Democrats, Republicans, independents. He was able to do it by going aggressively, right after the Democrats. And back then, there was a lot of talk about elections being rigged. Not as much as we saw in 2020, but there was a lot. But he ignored it to the degree that he didn't add fuel to the fire by bringing it up all the time. He just went on, carried on, had a campaign that brought people together that didn't divide the American people. And he beat the living daylights out of Jimmy Carter, as well as the entire United States Congress and the Senate. He did that. And then, of course, midterms came, and there were things that changed, but he won 2 terms. And if he ran for a 3rd term, he would have won. My point is this. The past anchors us, holds us back, keeps us from moving forward. When all your energy, everything is focused on the past, and that's what the communists are great at. Feed them the past. Put fire in them that will not consume the enemy, but consume themselves. And I see today Republicans just fighting Republicans. Republicans, that person's a rhino, that person's this, that person's that. Today, under the standards of quote unquote rhino, Reagan would be a rhino. Yeah, that's right. Think about that. Abraham Lincoln would be a rhino. What's with the name calling? Listen, I'm the first to tell you, if a Republican who has committed themselves to the conservative causes break their oath, their promise to us, get rid of them. You get rid of them in a primary. We have Republicans running that I'm not very thrilled about, but I'm going to vote for them because I'll tell you what, I'd rather have a Republican that is 50, 60, 70% with regard to what I want to see as part of their agenda than a communist in office. Because once you put a Republican in, it's like, wouldn't you rather have half of the pie than none of the pie? Once they're in office, you got a seat at the table. You do. You have a seat at the table. But remember what communism's all about. They're more patient than we are. They're going to come after us in America between now and November, and they're going to throw everything they could at us to make sure that the Congress remains in the hands of the party that loves them, the Democrat Party. So now we got all this going on, and then we have the border crisis. Now, listen to this. So now you got Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C. joined that team. The mayors are raising hell. Oh, you're sending Governor Abbott. You're sending all these illegal immigrants to our cities. Our crime's going up. We can't handle it. We need the army. We need the military. You can't do that. But yet, the mayor of New York, the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of D.C., they did this, folks. You know what this is? This was an oath, a pledge. We will make our cities sanctuary cities. Come one, come all. Come to our city. Come from Guatemala. Come from Mexico. And if there's a few terrorists in the mix, don't worry about it. We'll find out. A few criminals in the mix, don't worry about it. We'll find out. Well, they didn't find out. What they found out was that there were some bad people in the mix. Not all, but some. But they're all criminals. How could you say that, Lieutenant? How could you say they're all criminals? Because they're here illegally, right? If you're here illegally, you're in violation of the law and you're a criminal. Think about this. If you think they're going to negotiate with terrorists and not these individuals, well, then we got to put our head in the sand. So they let all these people in. They go to Chicago. They go to New York. They go to D.C. Governor Abbott and others are busing them in by the thousands. And hopefully they're going to be going to Delaware real soon, Joe Biden's neighborhood. And all of these big, tough mayors, the bleeding hearts, oh, come to our cities. Come one, come all. We'll feed you. We'll clothe you. Well, they found out real quick that the crime's going up, not all necessarily caused by illegals. I'm not going to say that, but maybe because a lot of the resources of these cities, the police, etc., have to concentrate on all these illegals coming in. You open the door. You said you want them. I think it's a tragedy that we got human beings. You talk about human trafficking. Our own government leaders are trafficking them up and down the turnpikes and the highways and roadways of America, running them here, running them there. All because of who? Joe Biden and the Democrats. And I get back to the question, why would any American vote Democrat? Look what they're doing to our country. So there's the border crisis, and there's the crying of the Democrats who are screaming bloody murder that we've got to put a stop to this. Now, remember what I said a few minutes ago? Well, some of the criminals, maybe terrorists who we don't know, have crossed that border. Get a load of this. And a lot of you here in the United States don't know this, so you're going to learn something tonight. The Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General released a redacted 34-page report confirming that the Central Border Security Agency failed to adequately assess, vet, and scrutinize, here you go, folks, Afghan evacuees who came to the United States after Joe Biden bungled that entire mess in Afghanistan. Think about that. Does anyone really believe there were no Taliban terrorists, Al-Qaeda terrorists in some of the people that came here from Afghan? Does some of you, do you really believe that some of those people from the Taliban have not gone to Mexico and have not crossed that border after they find out we really don't assess as we should? Department of Homeland Security evacuated more than 79,000 Afghan evacuees under Biden's command. 79,000. Think about this. Takes one. It takes one terrorist with one bomb. One terrorist with one bomb out of 79,000 to do the damage that was done on 9/11. What do you think? You think there's maybe one in the 79,000 that were not vetted, the number of them were not vetted? You think there's one that maybe already crossed the border? This is why the American people were rather angry that other news around the world took precedent over remembering what happened on 9/11. Because if we don't remember and we don't teach our children what happened here and who did it, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And I hope to God it doesn't. But the way things are going, folks, I'm afraid it is going to happen again. Our borders are open. Now, the Vice President of the United States, who really needs some help. I really believe that, folks. She twice declared that the U.S. southern border is secure. I mean, could you imagine? Think about this, folks. She watches TV like we do. Millions of refugees, millions of illegal immigrants. They're coming all over the place, up rivers, down rivers, crossing the border, jumping fences, flying in by heli. In fact, probably flying in compliments of Joe Biden. But she says it's secure. It's secure. What border is she looking at? It's secure. There's something wrong with this person. But she says it's secure. So the blind Democrats are cheering her. Yes, it's secure. But how do you explain the thousands in New York City? The thousands floating around this city or that city. In fact, in New Jersey, we had a few hundred of them floating around here. Dropped off at a rest stop, the New Jersey Turnpike, looking around. Where are we? Where do we go? Think about that. And that's a shame for those people. They're being led to believe that they're coming to the land of the free and the home of the brave and that Joe Biden's going to take care of them. He's the guy that has emboldened human traffickers. He's the guy with his government that has emboldened the proliferation of fentanyl in this country, killing your children, Mr. and Mrs. Democrat, your children, Mr. and Mrs. Individual who supports Joe Biden. That's right. It's easy to pass laws that hurt our children. But when your children start dying, and I hope to God it never happens, and your tears begin to flow as the tears of those mothers and fathers in Chicago and New York and Seattle and on flow, maybe you'll get the message. But isn't it a shame it has to come to that for you to get the message? So now you got the Vice President of the United States says that, listen to this. She said this on September 11th, she said this, all right, that the border situation was broken by who? By none other than the fall guy, Donald Trump. It was his administration, and it still needs to be fixed. Well, Mrs. Vice President, or however you want to call Miss, Mrs., him, her, you're part of that league. It was Donald Trump who fixed it. And you and Joe messed it up. As I recall, it was the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who had things under control. The wall was going up. Border Patrol was able to do their job. Crime was not running rampant as it is today. Boy, you talk about being blind. But you know who's more blind than her? You, Mr. and Mrs. Democrat, who are waving the Democrat donkey. Boy, I'd like to say something now. Replace the word donkey, folks. I don't want to say it on air. They're waving the Democrat symbol, the donkey. We love you, Joe. We love you, Vice President Harris. We love our party. Well, that's okay. Love your party, as far as I'm concerned, means you hate America. How dare you question our patriotism? Well, I don't like to do that. I don't want my patriotism questioned. But if you are a Democrat conservative and you support the Constitution and you support a lot of the policies that the American people truly want passed to keep this country safe and secure, I have no problem with you. But if you're a Democrat, liberal, individual, supporting the Chinese Communist Party, I'll question your patriotism. You're my enemy. I'm not going to say you're an enemy of the country, but you're my enemy. You really are. Because you're advancing policies that are going to hurt my family, my children, my grandchildren. How dare I say that? Well, I said it. That's the way it is. And don't you wish, I wish some politicians would even come on this broadcast and tell it like it is like that. Really. They need to tell it like it is. Have I lied to anybody? Have I quoted anybody? No. That's why I read some of this stuff. I want you to hear it right from them. But you see, the fact of the matter is a lot of politicians won't, whether a Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, they're just, very few will stand up and tell it like it is. But I always say, say it in a dignified manner. Say it in a manner that doesn't reduce the honor and dignity of the office you hold. I'm all for that. But tell the truth. I talk to a lot of political leaders off camera. You're right, Lieutenant, you're right. Well, why don't you come on and join me? Well, we don't want to offend anybody. You're offending me. You're offending the American people. Trudeau, you're offending the Canadian people. You're offending all of us. But get ready, because your 15 minutes is going to be up real soon. So now, with regard to Chicago, with regard to some of these other cities, listen to this. They haven't learned, folks. I mean, you'd think they would have learned by now, but listen to this. There's something called the Safety Act, SAFE-T, Safety Act. It's in Illinois. Now here, every single week, all right, we've done this. Now let me get to Chicago. This weekend, yesterday, day before yesterday, all right, this weekend, 30 shot and 5 killed, all right? Of course, the weekend before that, 26 shot, another dozen killed. In New York, there were shootings, there were people mugged, beaten in the streets of Manhattan. That's right, even an elderly man on his walker, okay? I bring that up for this reason. After the mayor of Chicago goes through her crime statistics and sees that every weekend you're getting 30, 40, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, whatever number of people shot and killed in your city, this is what Illinois is doing. Illinois is saying, or that they have actually passed this bill in 2021, and I understand it's going to be taking effect soon. Many of the provisions in the Safety Act, which the Democrats in Illinois passed in 2021, all right, will take effect. All right, will take effect soon in full force. This plan is in its current form will eliminate cash bail for offenders, prevent authorities from taking intruders from businesses and homes, and give bail jumpers a 48-hour leg on or before authorities will even begin trying to hunt them down. Now, some of these are in place already. All right. Some of these are in place, but apparently there's going to be much more coming to the people in Illinois. Think about this. Preventing authorities from taking intruders from businesses and homes. What's that all about? And give bail jumpers a 48-hour leg up before the authorities begin to try to hunt them down. Commit a crime, you got 48 hours to get away. And then maybe they'll come and get you. What do you think of that, folks? New York City, a student this week was shot near a high school in Brooklyn on Friday, making the second after-school shooting this week in the borough. And that's all after Mr. Mayor there in New York decided that he was going to declare a war on crime. He declared a war on crime that enables the criminals to commit their crimes without fear of the police. Well, I'll tell you what I believe. I would unleash the police on every criminal element across this country. I would. I would tell them to use the force necessary. Use the force necessary in order to apprehend them. And if that force means that you got to get tough and rough with them, then you do it. My government would back you. You make sure law-abiding citizens are protected. I would give everyone the right to bear arms and to use those weapons in the event that they feel that they are being threatened, that their lives are being threatened. Somebody's breaking into your house, in my view, well, you know they're coming through that door. They don't know what you have behind that door. But if your life is threatened, you take the necessary measures to stop them. That's what I would do. When it comes to those who are proliferating fentanyl and drugs that are killing our children, I would take the authority of judges away from them to do sentencing and make it mandatory sentencing with drug distributors. Those who are distributing, selling drugs, life in prison, and if any way we could connect any death as a result of that drug dealer proliferating their drugs, they should be given the death penalty. Mandatory. No chance of parole. Absolutely not. That's what I would do. I would make sure quality of crime violations. You go to New York, you got a bunch of people surrounding your car, actually spitting on windshields, and then with squeegees throwing water on out of a bottle they were drinking, washing your windows and demanding money. They'd be arrested immediately, and they'd put in a cage where they belong. You got to stop it at its root. And you know what its root is? Nah, it's not those squeegee guys, those low crime violators. It's not the felons. You know where the root is? The root is where the real criminals sit, in my view. The real criminals, the politicians, the legislators, the liberal judges, the Democrats. That is where the problem is in this country. And I'll tell you, if it was coming and in the future it comes from my own party, the Republicans, I would be out here saying, well, we got to get rid of those Republicans. Got to get rid of them. But that's not the case right now. It's the Democrats. And so my appeal tonight, 3 appeals. One, as I said at the top of the broadcast, I appeal to the Canadian people as well as our fellow Americans to get a hold of those individuals running for office in your province, in your state, in your city, in your town. Get all of their campaigns. Give them information about us. We'll get as many as we could on the air to help bolster them and to get their agenda in an educational way, an articulate way, heighten public awareness as to what's going on and why they need to stand strong. They need to hear from you. They need encouragement too. Number 2, I'm also asking that the pastors, the church leaders, the men and women of the cloth, if you will stand up and start talking to their congregations about what? About the need to fight for freedom and liberty within the framework of the law, within your Charter of Rights and Freedoms, within the Constitution of the United States, and within the Holy Bible, God's law, the book. I add that because that's your job, not my job. In a way it is, I guess. I mean, as Christians and people that believe in God, it's all of our job, but you know what I mean. I mean, gee, you guys stand behind a pulpit and preach to more people on a Sunday morning than I could ever reach in a month. Spurgeon did it. John MacArthur did it. Billy Graham did it. Why can't you do it? Really, why can't you do it? You that afraid of the devil? I mean, come on. You that afraid of the evil? Man, I'll tell you. But if you're not going to do it, we're going to do it. But I want you to know one thing. That when those who are in office and in power are those who are supported by the Chinese Communist Party's influence, by the ideology of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin come knocking at your door, and you look around for help, it may not be there. Because there may not be any country left. There may not be any country left for you to go to fight for your freedom. That's a fact. Think about that. I hope it sinks in, and some of you get in touch with me tonight. And then finally, is there a finally here? Well, finally, it's this, folks. I'm asking all of you to keep all of us in prayer. Keep your friends, your neighbors in prayer. I'm excited about what's happening in the United States and in Canada, folks. And what's happening is here in the United States, and I know Canada, you're getting a piece of it now, which is good. You got a Conservative Party leader. I don't know the guy, Pierre Pultaveri, I guess. I'm pretty bad at pronouncing some names, but some people like him, some don't. But if you love your freedom and liberty, you got to get rid of Trudeau. Don't fall into the trap. A lot of us in America have fallen into, well, I don't like this about him or her or this or that. Settle down. Settle down. You know what you got. You got a communist. All right, in office. Here's your chance. Here's your chance. Don't blow it because the opposition wants to sow discord. Pray for wisdom. Pray for understanding. God will lead you. He doesn't let anybody down. The Holy Spirit's there who'll lead you. Depend on him. Depend on him. And then finally, folks, I'm going to ask you, this is the part I don't like. We have grown so big, so strong. Yes, now we're able to bring for example, Canadian farmers on, Canadian candidates on. We're able to bring American candidates, farmers on, etc. We're able to bring a lot of help to a lot of people. And behind the scenes, folks, we're doing a heck of a lot. Project Maple Leaf is going to be wrapping up soon. We've got a meeting September 18th, right? This next week or so. We've been meeting all along. We've been quiet about it. Our executive summaries are now being put together. We're going to build this executive summary package that's going to go to every single congressman in the United States after our elections and every single member of your parliament after your elections. And we're going to bring it to the press and we're going to make it available to you. Maybe not earth-shattering to some, maybe earth-shattering to others, but it's going to be clear, unmistakable evidence that the people in Canada were right. Absolutely right. And we're going to be challenging those in office here in America and in Canada to explain why certain people in government were not prosecuted for what we believe to be crimes against the people. And we're not just going to say crimes like that. We're going to spell them out with the evidence. Let's see where we go from there, because we're not going to let up until it happens. This is why I think Joe Biden and the Democrat Party is shaking in their boots. And you could be sure after what happened with the conservative leadership in Canada, you could be sure Trudeau's not sleeping very much. He knows his days are numbered. And that new, I guess you have a Democrat Party there. I think you call it the New Democrat Party in Canada. I've been so busy here in America, I got to kind of bone up on what's going on there. But anyway, who is this way or that way, but not really conservative? Well, you know what? Watch this, folks. Watch this. They're going to jump ship, and they're coming to the side of the people. They always do. So what? They want to survive. Let them use that as an excuse, as long as they do what's right for freedom and liberty. So my point is to donate. www.campaignforamerica.com. We are literally spending thousands and thousands of dollars over what we're doing. On October 19th, I believe it is, my wife and I are going to be traveling to Ohio, not for an American event, not for an American issue. We're traveling to Ohio to meet one of your pastors' church leadership group, because we found out that pastor, I believe Tyson, Tobias Tyson, we found out through him, by the way, in a conversation on the air, that his church leadership is based here in the United States of America. And then the bells started ringing, the bells of freedom. I talked to my team. I said to my wife, we're going to Ohio. I want to meet with them. We're going to sit with them. And we're going to start to build, hopefully, a groundswell of support here in the United States. Here in the United States to help your pastors, Pastor Arthur, Pastor Tobias Tyson, and others who have been jailed and who have been targeted. Because we're not going to stop. But as you know, it costs money. The one thing I never wanted to do, and it really pains me to do it, because I know people have to pay their taxes and their kids with school opening. And I've always said, don't sacrifice that for us, okay? Don't do that. You pay your bills, you take care of the family. But as I said, $2, $5, every bit counts. You know, if 1,000 people gave $1, there's $1,000, all right? And that will pay for, I think, about 50% of what we have here in the studio and the live streaming. And the rest of the money is going to go towards the postage. You know, in Canada, you could send postage to your elected officials for free, and not in America. We got to pay the full price. So think about this, folks. Let's say $3 a mailing times over 500 congressmen. A lot of money. But I'm going to leave it up to you to pray about it. www.campaignforamerica.com. The only thing I can promise you is that we're going to continue to fight and never, never, ever give up. That's it. Man, did I go over an hour broadcast? Shame on me. But the numbers are still high. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. See you Thursday night. Campaign. Boy, I tell you. See, I'm getting tired. Thursday night, tonight in Canada. We hope to have some farmers on. If we don't, we'll have a lot of updates and more news and information for you. Thank you so much. And again, pray for us. Consider a contribution to the cause of freedom and liberty. And we'll see you Thursday night. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. God bless you. And God bless the freedom-loving world. And remember, always let freedom ring. Thank you.